Alright, hello everyone. I have decided that I'm going to change my fuel pump today / tonight. So, as most people know, you can actually cut a hole here on the floor panel. This is the rear seat, the half of the rear seat that has been removed. In my case, I have a 2005 GMC Yukon XL 1500 with a 5.3 liter flex fuel system. Now, pretty much removing this half of the seat is pretty easy. It's actually easy to show now that it's removed than prior. So it's 2, 4, 5 bolts, 5 main bolts that need to be removed. And then you have right here 2 more, and then 2 that would slot into here. Originally, I made the mistake of thinking this rear half of the seat came out by taking these 2 bigger bolts out that go right here. I'll show you those ones. Do not bother with those. They are just part of a cross beam. So these 2, this one and this one, do not take those out. Just take out these 2 and the ones that go through here as well. So next, we can go ahead and peel the carpet back. Now, I know the location of the pump simply because of a few forums that are out there. I forget the name of the thread that I looked at that has the same body style as mine. But in short, I will make a line to show you guys. It is pretty much the top left corner is about going to be this upper spot weld over here, and it'll go as far down as that and then cut over this way, and then that cap will come out. And my plan is to add some interior bars to this setup and then reattach the lid to it. I'm gonna lay some aluminum foil here and painter's tape and outline what's here out of fiberglass and epoxy resin. That way I will get a perfect mold. So let's get started. We have the surface pretty much prepped up now, and I'm going to go ahead and start laying down some fiberglass. I have purchased some US Composites 435 polyester resin. This stuff is very good for applications such as this. Also have a pretty good amount of fiberglass in here, but I already have some from my last job, so I'm going to go ahead and use this. It's a 1.5 inch chop strand mat. This will give you very good strength and flexibility. You probably want to use this on very, very tight corners, such as 90 degrees or like 100 degrees, where the corner starts churning in this way, because then you're going to get an air pocket pretty much at the very corner of it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and prep the fiberglass pieces. You can do this either in the car or out. I'm pretty much going to make 2 or 3 larger pieces and then cut a few strips for the tighter spots. What I like to use to cut mine are industrial scissors. These are not sheet metal cutters, they are just beefy scissors. Probably gone through 30 yards of fiberglass with these, and they are not dull one bit, so I highly recommend them. So using those, make sure you get some gloves on. Pretty much what I have here are 2 large pieces, 4 medium pieces, and then a couple small strips and sections. So let's head to the car now. The entire area is taped off. Remember, the hatch is actually only going to be about this big, so I wanted to overshoot, that way there's more room for mounting holes. And this actually isn't in the way of anything, because the cross beams will be running from bolt to bolt, left and right, and from bolt to bolt, left, right. So this area is practically empty. It's technically your under seat storage. So these 2 sections, I'm going to slightly overlap them and then start laying down the resin. So now that our fiberglass is ready to be set down, let's go ahead and mix our resin. This is MEKP. US Composites will send you one of these with every gallon of resin you get. And because it is above 100 degrees here, even though it is 2:30 in the morning, I will probably use 2.5 milliliters or 1/8 of a fluid ounce for this entire cup, because even that will give me about, at most, 10 minutes of working time. It hardens very quickly here. So let's see if my resin is not expired. These do have a shelf life of 6 months. At least that's the guesstimated time. The environment will affect that, as the extreme heat here will. Cut this out. All right then. The resin should be a bluish. I picked up a good amount of these off of Amazon for pretty cheap. They're just 2-inch basic cheap brushes. I think they come in a pack of like 20 or 40. You can actually get a $10 pack of these at Home Depot or your local hardware store. Before I mix this, I want to mention, do not use Dixie cups, as in the red beer pong cups, if you will. Those will melt on you, and I don't know if that's the case with different types of resins, but I know with this, it will get hot enough to where the cup will melt. And the last thing you want is a hole to spew resin all over your car while you're working on it. These do not melt. They will get hot, but they do not melt. Okay, so I have laid probably about 3 layers of fiberglass on here. Again, practically on the inside of this little square here is where the hatch is going to be. So what I made sure to do is reinforce here. As you can see, like the thicker layer comes up there. You know, you can make this as big as you want. I wanted to keep it within good measure, but definitely larger than the cutout is what the goal was. So we're gonna let this dry for about an hour or two, pull it out, and then we can cut the hole, you know, check if it's good measurement wise, and then we can take the fiberglass hatch and trim the outside of it to make it a perfect cut, and then we can drill the holes, screw it in. That will be our cap, so if we ever have to come back in here, we can do that. I'm probably going to use sheet metal screws this time around. My original plan was to actually use a nut riveter, so drill the holes, rivet nuts in the holes, so then you can just use bolts that go directly in each hole. So you know, a little bit better for corrosion resistance, but I do live in Phoenix, so rain isn't really an issue. But if you live somewhere where it rains a lot, I would probably recommend riveting nuts in there and then going around each nut with some silicone or something to prevent rusting from occurring. So yeah, let's let this guy dry and then we'll continue from there. All right. It is day 2 now of the fiberglass hatch build. I let it harden overnight just to be sure. Another quick tip, if you want to practically find the center point of the fuel pump, you can actually wrap some string around the bolts, the 4 bolts around here, and that'll give you approximately the center. So the center of the fuel pump is actually about here. So this would be pretty much right where the tubes come out of the top of the fuel pump. This is more or less the actual center of the fuel pump. I'm gonna go ahead and add a little bit more fiberglass on the lower half, let that dry, then we can pop that out and cut the hatch out underneath, and then change the fuel pump and put the hatch back on, and we're done. So the second layer is set now. These 2 dots, the left one was where the center of the rope is, the one to the right is where the center of the fuel pump is. So that way I will have these markers available for me later. Now I just gotta let it dry and then we can pop it out. All right, so now let's go ahead and peel it out after the second layer has been set. That's the best I could do for now. We're gonna trim it to size first and then see how much more you can take off, but the fact of the matter is this tape that's left behind here isn't going to cause much of an issue. I can pull the rest of this foil out, but it looks like the very first layer of tape over here seem to adhere to the resin. I'm not too worried about that. Plus, you know, throw a coat of paint on here and it'll be perfect. All right, so now that we have the floor cleaned up, let's go ahead and reposition this exactly where it should be. It's a glove. Now we have our center mark here for the actual fuel pump. A couple ways we can trace it. What I'm going to do is actually glob a good amount of paint, for that matter, and then reposition it onto the floor, and that'll give you a good indicator as to where it actually is. So we're going to take this, flip it over, and then right under that point, I'm just going to give it a quick spray. And that's pretty much our center. So now we can just position it back again and carefully align it before you push down. And if we lift this up, so I'm going to cut a section around this area with the die grinder, and then we can check out what's under there, see if I have other problems. Hopefully it is my fuel pump and I'm not doing this for no reason, but let's get cutting. Alright, so before I actually start cutting, I want to be very sure that the top of the fuel pump is where I think it is. So what I did is I took a 1/4 inch drill bit and I taped it at 1/8 of an inch, so it will not go in further than it needs to. I pretty much made 2 holes here, and when I stick my camera in there for my phone, I'll be able to see the flash shining through so I can actually see what I'm looking at. Using the right tool for the right job, I stick this in here. You guys can see that this is actually the fuel tank pressure sensing module. There's a clip for it. So yeah, we are in the right place. Now we can cut the rest of the panel out and go from there. Okay, so the panel or the hatch was just cut out, and here's our fuel pump. Definitely looks like there's enough room to get it out. Once the ring comes out around the edge of the fuel pump, then it should pop straight up. And I already vacuumed around the area and cleaned up all the burrs around here. But what I do want to finish doing quickly, just spray paint around the edge just to make sure it doesn't rust. And I will be using a protective type of rubber lip with a inner metal barb that holds it on. This stuff, this will pretty much pop straight on the edge of that, and then it will give it a nice seal and protection. But just for extra measure, I'm actually going to use some of this weather foam weather strip, foam window seal, whatever. And I think I'm going to opt for painting it the red acrylic enamel, just because, you know, fuel pump, fuel, fire, that kind of stuff. That way, if I ever sell the vehicle and someone takes the car to a shop or something around the lines, they can see exactly where the panel in reference to the fuel pump is. With this tool, it's a nice little tool. This actually pivots, or actually the cutting portion does. So when you put this on here, you apply some pressure and pull off to the side. It's hard to do this one-handed. For example, up here, and then on the side, and then that gives it a nice chamfered edge, so you're not cutting yourself or cutting any lines or anything around the anything like that. I'm gonna do the inside portion now, and then I will take out the fuel pump. Alright, paint's done. It still needs to dry a little bit. There's a little bit of overspray, but no one's going to see that. The one thing I did notice is the main fuel pump harness comes in right here. And I just barely missed that. Well, I definitely cut it, but it didn't get to the actual wire itself. Of course, my battery is disconnected, but you want to be very careful as to not hit this wire. Yeah, it's never going to focus, but it pretty much just nicked the insulation of the positive and negative there. I did not get into the copper, so that's good, but just for you guys, be careful about that. That's why I was cutting, looking, cutting, looking, cutting, looking. So with these ones, make sure that, so here's the end piece that actually goes onto the barb. Squeeze this, hold it in place, and then push off the hose. Do the same for this one. So squeeze this in and then push off the hose. This stays on here until we actually take the fuel pump off. Next, for the fuel tank pressure sensor, you just pull up on this tab and then pull out. That will come off. For this one, you need to use a pick tool and pull up on this little this way on it. I used this tool for that, so I put it in here and then pulled up and then out, and then I released that. Next, we need to take off the ring around the fuel pump. So flathead screwdriver and a mallet. Alright, so I know somewhere out there has to be a specific tool for this, but I do not have that tool. Normally, I guess you would attach it. It would be like a giant wrench, which would attach to these little teeth. But I think the only thing for me that got it off was WD-40. Spray it on these little nubs here, because that's where it goes into these catches. And then I used a screwdriver and I kept hitting on these points here, so practically like this, and that seemed to pop it off. So, this is it. This looks like the original to me. Yep. That fuel sock is really dirty. Oh, the thing I almost missed, and that would have ruined me pretty much, is this barb right here. The return or whatever this is. That's inside the tank, so don't forget about that. Right, so these are the two fuel pumps that are practically identical. They're still both made in Mexico, so it's probably the old Delphi original OEM part here, and this is an AC Delico, but I understand they're supposed to be copying part for part, so that's good. What's different is here, the FPR looks like it's a little bit more recessed than this FPR over here. And the only other difference I can see is the color of the fuel level sending unit. This is black, that's white. I'm not sure if this is a different composition than this. I know it has to be E85 or ethanol compatible, so I'm gonna have to pop off these plastic connectors and put them on here, and then also on the inside, this one. So I popped all three connectors off. Pretty much what you want to do is get in here with a pick tool. Once if it's actually pushed on past this lip like it would be normally, lift up, pull one side out, and then do the same with the other and pull that out. Don't try to do it at the same time, you'll break it. And on the new pump, when you put them on, all you're gonna have to do is push it on, and it's secure. So let's go ahead and before we reinsert the fuel pump, there's two things that we're gonna have to make sure we do. Not forget the seal, and two, reconnect the interior line, so the one that's in the fuel tank. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. Actually, no, I'm not gonna do that now. I'm gonna put the seal on first, because then I can't get that on. So put the seal on. Try to be gentle with the fuel level sensor because it's pretty fragile. Well, maybe not. I don't actually know what I'm doing, guys. I'm just fucking around with fuel and stuff. Oh my god, son. Now that it's in, Now we can connect this. Alright, so I made the mistake of putting the seal on before I connected the interior line, and then it was overlapping it, so just make sure it's in like this. The line is within the seal, so yeah, you know what I mean. Okay. Alright, so after it's seated in there, it seemed like the AC Delco is a little bit tighter than the previous one. It was catching on these teeth. I took it out and pushed it back in, but it seems like it's just because of the tension of the O-ring around the outside. So it says right here, do not reuse, but we're gonna be awesome today and do that because this is probably built better than the aftermarket version of these rings. They are $7 on Amazon if you want to buy one. I don't have one as of this moment, and I need a car ready by Monday. So this will have to do. It's pretty tight on here. What I'm going to try to do first is push and twist. Probably won't work right off the bat. The ring is not fully seated right now, but this is a perfect time to test your fuel pump to make sure everything is operating as it should. So that's connected. I'm going to go connect my battery terminal next. 8mm. So the previous problem I was having with my fuel system is you'd have to pretty much prime the vehicle 3 times, and then it would crank over and have a slight rough idle for about 4 seconds. And on occasion I did get a lean notification from the check engine light or the ECU. So I'll prime it 1 time just because there might be air in the line. Turn it off and do a full start. There. Let's turn off the AC. And let's check for acceleration. Sounds perfect. This still doesn't seem to want to go back on, so I figured there's a better way. I don't have the dedicated tool for this, so I'm going to have to improvise, but what I think I'm going to do, and it should work, the surface here on top of the fuel pump is dry. I was going to use some type of grease, but actually petroleum-based kind that you normally use for ball joints and whatnot might have corrosive properties on the seal around the fuel pump, so I'm not going to do that, but I will use white lithium grease, which should work fairly well and prevent any surface rust if it were to occur. This should be stainless steel, but I mean between the ring and that, it's pretty dry out here, so I don't think that'll be an issue, but I'm going to go ahead and try that and see what happens. What the issue actually is it won't slide easily. If you're hammering on one end, all that's going to do is press the ring on one side, and then this side will want to come up. So if there's enough lubrication, it should slide easier. Alright, so hopefully that did something. Alright, so while my camera was charging, I got some things done here. The ring, pretty much the easiest way I could get it on here, and that still took me an hour and a half. White lithium grease on these little nubs I was referring to earlier. these guys. And then what I had to do is use oil filter pliers, I guess. They're pretty big pliers with teeth on them, so these guys are what I had to use. What I did was take them, put one end over there on that clip, or on that insert, see the cutout, put one there, put one on this one, and then pretty much put tension on it this way, and yeah, get this. The second part of that was, so as I'm holding tension on the pliers pulling this way, I put a screwdriver on this nub, and I also hit it with a hammer. So pretty much both hands, or my left hand was holding on to both, pulling tension and holding the screwdriver. My right hand hit it with the hammer. So that got the ring moving, and once that happened, it fell into place, and then that's that. The other thing I did is I added some of this edge protectant. It's rubber, nylon infused rubber, and on the inside there's a metal bar. So once you push it on, you will not get this off without some force. And it's awesome because it forms contour of fairly tight turns. Like the corners, technically, if I wanted it to be perfect, I would cut it, but this way it's all one piece, except for where I started, obviously. So this looks nice, and you won't cut yourself if you have to go in here again, you know. I also laid the fiberglass on here, as you can probably tell from the holes, and I drove some of these awesome self-tapping sheet metal screws through it, and pretty much I only drove it through until it made the hole, and then I stopped, and then I took the fiberglass portion out, and then I slowly drove each one in to make sure it wouldn't actually hit the fuel tank. It's not really an issue, only over here. These are probably the two closest ones to the fuel tank. All the other ones are perfectly fine. But yeah, this will hold very well. And I will also be putting some weather stripping around here, and that will seal it up nicely. So next, because I already have the holes in the fiberglass portion, I have a perfect idea of where I need to cut it. I'm gonna get as close as I can to these holes. Still leave a little bit of a lip though, and then I can paint it, put the weather stripping down, and then screw it in. Okay, well, the paint job is done. It is acrylic red. So let's see how she looks installed, and then screw it in. Just gonna set it down, see what it looks like. So it's pretty much gonna look like that. All right, so it is the next day, and this is what the paint coating looks like. Came out really well, and it's a hard coating, so you can't scratch it off. Now, the one last thing I wanted to do before this actually gets installed in the vehicle is just have fuel pump assembly spray painted on here, ASSY for short. To do that, I pretty much just went into Word and then turned the page to landscape and moved up the font in size and then printed it out like so. And then this can be taped on to the front of the panel, and then just quick spray paint. That way, you know, it's labeled correctly, and everyone who would peel back the carpet would know exactly what it's for. So I'm gonna go ahead and spray paint that on. All right, everyone. So the text is now spray painted onto the hatch. This again was just using black automotive acrylic spray paint. This stuff's really nice when it dries. It won't scratch or anything. But let's go ahead and lay the weather stripping down, and then we can put the hatch on, and we are done. Back seat will go in a little bit later, but that is it.